Welcome to the party. I'm Owen. In fact, I'm just Owen. Why am I here on my own? Why would I possibly do this on my own? Well, I'll tell you. A friend of the show, Zowseed, occasional contributor, person who cares deeply about role-playing games, writes his own blog, does his own analysis, asked me about DC20. And I said, I've got a lot to say. Man, should I just record a solo podcast about this? And, I guess this is easier than basically typing up a 300-page essay. I'll just spend a half an hour chatting about it instead. Well, I don't know if I'll get to half an hour myself, but we'll see what we can do. Alright, what the devil is DC20? You might be asking. Is this some kind of DC Universe D20 hybrid? No. This is a fellow called the Dungeon Coach has decided to make his own fantasy adventure RPG to fix all the problems of 5th Ed D&D. A noble endeavour, considering how many problems there are in 5th Ed D&D. As you know, gentle listener, I love railing against 5th Ed D&D. I love making fun of it. I love pointing out their gaffes and their mistakes and their flaws. And I'm glad that someone is making the effort to, I've got to do my own thing here. Traditionally, however, this would be referred to as a fantasy heartbreaker, which is when somebody who has played a lot of D&D, not a lot of other RPGs, decides to go and redesign the RPG in a bold new way for a bold new audience, and does it by basically producing a version of D&D with their own house rules. Sometimes the Fantasy Heartbreaker is pretty good. Most of the time, it's just another version of D&D, which doesn't have the penetration of D&D, doesn't have the reach of D&D, so ultimately we'll get an edition, maybe 2 editions, maybe the person's a maniac, just maintains it forever, but generally it doesn't last very long. That's what we used to call them anyway. We used to call them Fantasy Heartbreakers when someone did it. But because we're in the streaming age, the YouTube age, the tuber men are everywhere, these potato fellows, somebody like him might have a big audience. And in fact, he does. He's got thousands of subscribers on YouTube. He's dispensing his advice. I never watched any of his stuff, but could be good advice. He's got a bunch of videos about this. And he's put together this DC20 RPG with the goal of improving 5th Ed. Now, as anyone who's been following along with the RPG industry for the last little bit knows, D&D has annoyed a lot of its fan base recently, and they're in the process of switching over to 5.5 edition. It's not 6th edition. They don't want to ever say 6th edition. It's always going to be 5. Kids, don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave your papa. Stay with us. It's still the same, but we have to produce new books. We have to make you buy new books. Stay with us. There's no rules. There's just rulings. Stay with us. No. There's always a window during these changeovers between editions, and the new one is a new edition. It's not a very interesting, big change to edition, but it's a new edition. There's always going to be a disgruntled fan base with a bunch of requests that don't get fulfilled. Pathfinder arose out of such moments, but also other kind of 3.5 improvements and retroclones, and kind of halfway between 4th Ed, 13th Age, and a couple other smaller ones around. So there's also a window to hack out a little bit of space for your own game here. And this guy's got a fan base. He's got a lot of followers. He's got a lot of people who watch his videos. I'm sure they're good. Then I haven't really watched them, so I'm sure they're good. What I did take a look at his RPG. So his pitch is basically, if you look at his Kickstarter, he's got a nice Kickstarter running up, and I'm going to tell you how many backers it has and how much money it's raised. As of today, with 13 days to go, he's raised 1.4 million euros, and he's got 14,631 backers. Now, a lot of RPGs will be doing very well if they get 2,000 backers. This guy is about functionally, you do most of your business in the first 2 days and the last 2 days. This guy could easily finish up at 2 million euros here, 2.5 million euros, easily. Because the last 2 days when people are going to come along back again. He's got, I think, 28,000 backers on YouTube. He's converted half of them into a sale here. Now, how many of each one? Well, vast majority are 4,000 people roughly are buying the PDF. About the same number are buying the hardcover. And then you got a large number getting all the digital content, and a large number getting the core set. So the different hardcovers there. So fair play to him. This is a hugely successful launch. He's got something here. He's got a fan base. He's got people who are willing to come along. Certainly willing to buy a core book. So what are his selling points for this game? Let's take a look at the Kickstarter. He says, right, he is evolving JRPGs. He's going to 4 simple attributes: might, agility, intelligence, charisma. So this is kind of a common thing that people occasionally toss around as an idea that they should just get rid of Constitution. It's kind of boring. That's almost never used in an attack stat. And the second one then is, because you're trimming one off the physical trio, you kind of got to trim one off the mental trio. And wisdom gets jettisoned. Alright, fine. 4 action point system makes combat more fluid and dynamic. Oh wow, an action point system in a D&D-like RPG? I wonder where that idea came from. Don't worry, we'll talk about this in Pathfinder 2nd Edition in just a little bit. Reactions suspend action points outside your turn. Alright. Custom character and ancestry creation systems. Alright. Spellcasters get mana points and spell enhancements. Alright. Marshals get stamina points and attack maneuvers. Skill challenge mechanics for combat, social, and exploration. Social mechanics for disposition, reputation, and morale. Exploration mechanics for travel, rest, and downtime. So, he has hit all of the common complaints about shortfalls in 5th Ed. And some of his solutions are to take stuff from Pathfinder. Functionally, what he's doing here is, what he's actually kind of done, is he said, right, Pathfinder uses a 3-action system, plus a reaction. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that a slightly more open 4-action system, where you've got 4 actions, and you've got basically, you can spend one of those to get a reaction, or one or more of those to get a reaction if you want. Grand, fine. This is heavily influenced by 5th Ed. It's Heartbreaker. This is D&D being remade. But it's also taken a bunch of influence from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Because Pathfinder 2nd Edition has a lot of really good ideas. And I suppose you might as well do this. Now, from the layout of the game and everything I'm looking at here, looks competently laid out. It's got kind of sort of grayscale-ish pages. It's got kind of purple font, but most of the text is kind of in black. There's, some yellow pages. It's your standard kind of 2-column format RPG book. It's not leap off the page amazing, but it's perfectly readable. Bit of white space, but this is a draft document, so you could easily get this stuff tidied up in editing. And yeah, this looks like somebody who's read 5th Ed and played 5th Ed quite a lot. Read Pathfinder 2nd Edition and certainly played it a bit. And decided, I can build a game from this. Now, it has, if you look on the Kickstarter, it has got a ton of testimonials from other influencers in the scene. Now, if you take a look at some of their videos, they are all paid content. Now, I am not alleging malfeasance or anything here. It's just when you have paid content, you're going to give it a as open-hearted an assessment as possible. And from that, it's going to be fine to cherry pick out a good quote or two. I'm not alleging, this is a giant scam, this is a thing. I don't think it's a scam. Seems like it's full RPG. He seems to have designed a good RPG. It is a fantasy heartbreaker. It is just doing something that already exists in the marketplace. But it's there. He's gotten some coverage. He's gotten clearly, either he's monetized his own fan base really well, or he's generated some additional hype with this, and good on him. But it's between 5th Ed D&D and Pathfinder 2nd Edition, this ground is well tended. But good on him for selling people another one. I take a look here, and there's a couple other things that jump out at me. 4 action points: move, spell, attack, dodge. This is basically what you could be doing in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or even from a certain point of view, what you kind of do with bonus actions in 5th Ed, but he's systematically codified it. This is grand. It's all good. High rolls matter. Rolling high is exciting in DC20. Everything from attacks and skill challenges to investigating for clues is rewarded by a by-5 system. Your attacks deal more damage to an enemy of every 5 they beat their defense by. When you succeed in a check and a skill challenge, you get +1 more success point for every 5 you beat the DC by, getting you closer and closer to victory. Now, if you've played Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you would know that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you roll a natural 20 on your attack roll, or you roll 10 over the target number, you get a critical hit, which upgrades your degree of success 1. So a success becomes a critical success, a failure becomes a success. Alright? So this is something he's looked at in Pathfinder, gone, that's a really good idea, and taken it. Now, a lot of this stuff, the martial system, definitely heavily influenced by 4th edition D&D, which is kind of funny because he did an interview with Mark Seifter, where Mark Seifter was one of the main designers on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and he's a very experienced designer. And he was asking this guy about, did you take that from 4th edition D&D? And the dungeon coach had never played 4th edition D&D. So clearly he's a skilled designer who has found the same solutions or the same origins of ideas that came from 4th edition D&D. Awesome. All good. Looking through the rules. A character sheet is, I want you to imagine a D&D character sheet. I want you to imagine the 6 stats. Reduce those to 4, put the skill points on your skill system under them, and away you go. It's fine. It's very much D&D. Now, if you go on to the Kickstarter page, you can download an alpha of this game, and you will be able to read through it. If you are the kind of person who can read an RPG rules and understand them, you will see that there is a ton of 5th Ed near and a good chunk of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is someone has mashed up the two games and produced what I would say is probably a pretty good system. Your stats go from your 4 stats, remember, go from up to start at -2, and you get 12 attribute points to increase them to a cap of +3 at first level, and then at 5th level that becomes +4. And every few levels you get a +1 to one of those, but there's a cap at 5th is +4, 10th is +5, and so on. So your stats, you will get your stats up, and you will get most of your stats up, but they will go up kind of relatively slowly. You got a skill list. It's I'm going to read just got athletics, intimidation under might, acrobatics, trickery, and stealth under agility, charisma, animal, insight, and influence, intelligence, investigation, medical, survival, knowledges, nature, history, arcana, religion, occultism, and prime awareness. If you've played your Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you are familiar with that skill list. There are very, very few differences there. The only thing that might be slightly different is you've got insight in there, kind of replacing perception for figuring out what people are up to under charisma. Now, like, this is all fine. What they've done slightly differently is there are also trade attributes, which are like a separate skill point pool for stuff like I'm an illustrator, I'm a musician, I'm a crafter, and so on. So they've kind of siloed off those often non-combat useful skills into a different pool. And rather than skills being just on or off, it's more like Pathfinder, where you get a mastery bonus based on your level in it by 2. So a novice has 1 point of skills, +2. Adept has 2 points, +4, and so on. So it's a little more like a skill point system or the skill training system Pathfinder 2nd Edition than it is in D&D, where there's only like effectively 3. You're untrained, you're trained, or you have expertise in, or whatever it's called. So you're looking similar stuff for skills. Checks and saves, again, very similar. You look at those again, you'd be like, yeah, these are how skills and saves work. You've got, your AC starts at 8, and you add on the bonuses you'd think you'd add on. It's got advantage and disadvantage. You can stack it though, so if you've got 3 sources of advantage and basically 1 source of disadvantage, you get to roll 3d20 and pick the highest one, because one of the sources of advantage gets taken away by the disadvantages and so on. So it's they cancel each other out. It's not like, I've got 15 disadvantage, 1 advantage, so I just make my check. It's what you think it is. You got to count it up and down. Similar to Pathfinder, if you try to do the same action again in a turn, you just start getting stacking disadvantage on it. So if you try to attack, first one is fine, second one is disadvantage 1, third one is disadvantage 2, so on and so forth. Alright. You get degrees of success. Again, as I mentioned, 5 over. Away you go. Attacks and defense, they do the... God bless him. He separates out weapon attack and unarmed strikes as 2 different sorts of things. Your fists are not weapons, kids. Your fists are not weapons. They are often used to hurt people, but they are not a weapon. Never a weapon. Never a weapon. You've got a physical and a mystical defense. Base of 8, plus your combat mastery based on your class, plus your agility attribute for your physical defense, plus an armor bonus from your armor. Mystical defense is your base of 8, your combat mastery, and your attribute score of your charisma. And your intelligence. So, that's what it is. Yeah, it's fine. He's got a system where when you are hit with some things, you also make a save. And there's effects for hit and a failed save, miss and a failed save, where the effects on it are determined by the save, and the damage is determined by whether the attack hits or misses or not. That's slightly interesting. It's similar to Pathfinder's kind of partial effect stuff, when it takes a critical success effectively on a save to completely negate the effects of a lot of spells. Otherwise, you're basically making what's called a basic save. Okay, this looks competently put together. It's got a bunch of solid-ish changes. What's this doing the Pathfinder isn't doing? Not a lot. I think it'd be good, but it is the kind of thing that's sort of there if you're a fan of this guy, oh yeah. If you didn't like Pathfinder stuff for some reason, but you kind of want a bit of a halfway house between 5th Ed and Pathfinder 2nd Edition, this one's here for you. Maybe, and there could be, and there's a big enough audience for like 14,000 backers. I'm not going to sneeze at. Yeah. Like, you still got reduction in this one. You have 14 damage types, because you have to have slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. Then you got a fire, lightning, cold, and sonic. And then there's poison, and corrosion, and radiant, and umbral, and psychic, and true damage. Oh yeah. Can't be reduced at all, baby. Look, this is what the game is. It's got some nice ideas. My problem would be, this is a fantasy heartbreaker. It's going to let you play a slightly different flavor of D&D or a slightly different flavor of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. That's what this game is. Is that enough? Huh. For my money, no. Because if I play Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I have the option of playing with all of Pathfinder's stuff. All their adventure paths. All the rules are available free online. They're really carefully balanced encounter system. The whole thing just works. It's tested. There's other GMs. If you're interested in running Adventure Path, you can get the Adventure Paths on Foundry. Huge time saver because we're playing online. The stuff is set up for you. You can talk to other GMs about it. You can get feedback. There's that whole support network there. If you want to play 5th Ed, you'll never be short players. There's tons and tons of 5th Ed players. You will always get new players for your games. If you want to play this, you have to take this to your group and sell it to them. Now, maybe they're all fans. Maybe they're all big fans of this guy and will be all like, oh yeah, man. Dungeon Coach, love the dude. Great beard. Let's do this thing. And away they go. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if this is what your group wanted, kind of an expansion of 5th Ed, a bit more interesting, a bit more flexible, you were part of kind of, you thought, oh, on too tribal 5th Ed to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition, this is my halfway house. Away you go. For me, listen, I've played a lot of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Love it. Played a bit of 5th Ed, don't care for it. Alright? But those two games fulfill a very similar play space in terms of themes of kind of heroic fantasy and adventuring. That's what they do. Now, if this guy's got amazing exploration mechanics, awesome. I'll certainly take a look. Pathfinder 2nd Edition could certainly do with a little bit of expansion of that stuff, right? But if you're producing a great RPG, I want a great horror RPG. I want a great mecha RPG. I want a great Transformers RPG. I want a great action hero RPG. I want different stuff. Because I came up in the 90s, and back then we used to play different RPGs. I want a great cyberpunk RPG. I mean, I've said this before. I go asking about Shadowrun, and I say, which edition should I play? And it's like I went in and asked which religion is right. You know, you get every different answer about what's there, what to play, and everything. And the end opinion is, oh, look, they all suck, man. Play something else instead. Use Fate. And I don't want to use Fate. Don't particularly like Fate. I don't think Fate replicates the cyberpunk milieu a lot. This is something that's been worked over. Stuff has been synthesized from two existing RPGs that are in the same play space, the same play style space, and it looks, perfectly competent. Oh, look, there's the weapons. There's Sickle. It does 1 damage. it does slashing damage. It's got the thrown trait and the concealable trait. This is like the smallest step away from 5th Ed towards Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and just nicely settling in the pocket there. Nothing super interesting is happening. Armor is Dior, That's what the game is, man. Like, there's conditions, cool. They're exactly what you think they are. It's what the game is. It's not bad at all. Not bad at all. But it's doing something that's already there. Now, if you are kind of sick of 5th Ed and you don't want to go to the new edition, but you want a little bit more option, yeah, this is a good one. If you don't want to do Pathfinder 2nd Edition for whatever reason, yep, this is a decent option. All the ancestries are here that you think are here. They're all there. There's also Giantborn and Beastborn. You can get your furry on. It's all good. There's a flexible system for building up. There's a certain amount of points of traits. You build up your basically your little, your half bat or whatever person. Put them together. Awesome. Rock on. But yeah, it's doing something that's already there. It's in a slightly different flavor. I haven't really seen much about the setting. I assume it's got a setting of some sort. This is a bold setting. Hasn't really mentioned that. Maybe it's just a generic. Yeah, this is something you can go off and do your own thing. Oh, rock on. It's good with classes: the barbarian, the fighter, the druid, the sorcerer, the wizard, the cleric, the ranger, the monk, the rogue, the warlock, and the bard, but also the spellblade and the commander. It's grand. It is. I think you buy this. This is what you're after. You'd have a fine time with it. But it's doing something that is already being. The ground is well tended for this particular strain of heroic fantasy. Yeah, that's what it is. I keep trying to think of a different way to put this, but it's what it is. If I was looking for something bold and different, I'd want someone do a great cyberpunk game. Really, do a great cyberpunk game and sell me on that, like a nice crunchy one. Don't go rules light. Really dig in and give me the one where it's about buying gear and looking at gear. I'll do it myself if I have to, but it's just that's actually what I want. Give me, maybe some weird fantasy or weird sci-fi setting that's not just D&D over again. Give me the crazy anime fighting RPG, Give me something a bit different, something I can tear my teeth into a bit, and give me the support. Now, I'm looking at this here, and what I don't much see, there's a 5th Ed DC20 conversion guide as a stretch goals. Good for him. He has an adventure. That's good, because I was about to ask about that. Because I have a strong opinion that adventures are very important for selling people on your game. You've got a one-shot collection things. That's grand. Yeah, look. If this is what you're after, awesome. He's got some live play game with some other YouTubers. Good for him. He's very successful. Congratulations to the Dungeon Coach on this. He's been doing this for 5 years, apparently. Good on him. Build his audience. Clearly supported his audience. Got a Patreon, got Discord. Go check out the Kickstarter. I think it's a heartbreaker, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it's doing D&D again. It's actually going halfway between D&D and Pathfinder 2nd Edition. At the risk of repeating myself, that's what it is. Alright. Well, if any of these issues raised in this podcast have enraged you, or otherwise want to come and make me shout at you, or tell me, Owen, don't record an episode on your own again, please come to our Discord, come to our socials, go to Spotify comments and shout at us. But for now, this party's over. Okay, folks. Well, it's Savage Mick here.
And now it's my turn. This is the slightly more confused run to your head of the two-headed giant after the excellent Hida-O-Win has given his opinion. Now, just in case it wasn't made clear, I'm going in blind on this. I haven't heard Hida's take on DC20's playtest rules as they've been released along with the Kickstarter. And as I'm sure most of you are aware if you're long-time listeners to the show, I'm not what you'd call a systems guy, so hence the run to your end of this. So I'm looking at the PDF. I have it open here in front of me for reference because it is a lot. There's about 150 pages of material here. No pictures, but lots of tips. I hope you like tips and then examples and then sidebars. And some of the sidebars have tips and examples in them. It's a fairly dense piece of kit. I suppose my first impression looking at it would be that this is a system designed by someone who went, hey, Pathfinder 2nd Ed guys and Dungeons & Dragons 5th Ed guys, we don't need to fight. We can actually be friends, best friends, and we can move in together. We'll take all the stuff from your house and all the stuff from your house. Let's just imagine we're mediating this house move between them. We're going to take all your stuff and we're going to put it in the same house. And man, there'll be a big trip to IKEA somewhere along the way to organize it. And is it going to need organizing? And we're going to need to label everything. We're going to label absolutely everything. And I suppose so that if we don't get confused, let's spend a bunch of points on stuff. Let's be constantly spending points on things. We've abandoned the moving in thing. IKEA is no longer in the frame. I'm just talking about the system now. I've not read all the classes. I kind of confine myself to the main challenge, system resolution stuff, attributes, things like that, actions, and such like, and whatnot. As one of my dearest friends likes to say, and whatnot there is, and there's a lot. It's a 4-stat system. They've kind of gone, we don't really want to get bogged down in the vagaries of what wisdom is, and what's the other one that dropped? Constitution. We've got might, agility, intelligence and charisma. I believe that was the 4. Let me just noisily scroll through to make sure I got those right. Or I can just, it's a PDF. It's a very well put together PDF, fully searchable and fully hot linked. So there they are. Intelligence, charisma, might. So there's 2 broad camps. There's the physical camp and the mental camp. Fine. But you don't actually have stats in those things. You just have bonuses. So your stat is your bonus. So instead of deriving a bonus from a stat like you do in the other core systems that follow the D20 model, they've pared this down. This has been talked about as sort of a positive, and they're not the only system that does this. What I would say about this is it's probably something that a lot of systems these days have gone away from the core attributes because they're cowards, basically. It's are lazy, or are very stupid, or they just don't understand things the way I do. Yes, that's a fair way of looking at it. I get it. It does simplify these sorts of systems, these D20 systems, the way they are played today. But I can't help but think that all of them are missing a trick. And DC20 is a brilliant example of this trick being missed and then having to be recreated, but we'll get to that. By ignoring the fact that in the age of digital desktop, tabletop play, in the age of having your character sheet running on your phone and having that reporting in to your GM's phone so they can see what's going on, you're missing out if you take those attributes and take away the stats and just leave the modifiers, essentially. Because in the way that Numenera used those main stat pools, and they only had 3, those main stat pools are pools that can be expended and built back up again and regained and gained, and That's, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I've just moved house and we get an awful lot of emergency services coming by, so that may be a siren in the mix there. Anyway, a bit like this review, sirens everywhere. Yeah, it's a choice, but the thing that I think kind of rubs me the wrong way about it is that all of the stuff you're avoiding by getting rid of the stat pools in the main attributes and just going with modifiers, this DC20 system adds in again later on by giving you a whole bunch of points to spend. Now, they could just be your attributes. In fact, in combat, I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff. Like, it's standard array points by all this stuff. In many cases, the subsystems in this DC20 system are well thought out, but I'm not sure they're all well conceived. So having hit upon a wrong-headed idea, getting rid of attribute pools, they then put together a very, well thought out statting system using this sort of your stat is your bonus idea. And it's, they cover a lot of different ways of doing it. Standard array points by, they even have a roll method for someone who wants to misunderstand Gary Gygax's original rulings on tournament play for D&D and decide that that's somehow appropriate to long form campaign. CR Tome of Gygax coverage on that in there right at the end. It's mind blowing. My mind was blown. I just moved house. I think my mind is blown. Yeah, so like I said, I think this is a somewhat wrong-headed move, and it's then thought out in a very sort of even and consistent way. If that makes any sense to you. What did I say? I said well-constructed, ill-conceived. Something like that, yeah. Okay, then skills, trades, and languages, and the language around how you put together your skills, trades, and languages, they're all treated roughly the same, except then you get to mastery, which is its own thing. There's again there's some really confusing language in here because there's skill points that you acquire, and you get them from backgrounds, from your class, from various other things. Are there feats in this? I forgot to check and get that far. I should have gotten those maneuvers, techniques. Yeah, those stink of feats. I'll confirm a little later on. Technique list. I'll just check. This will tell me. Yeah, there's feats. They're just called techniques. So you can pick up different types of points to spend on trade, skills, and languages. There's a points buy system for languages, which is, it feels like, well, languages are like skills, they're like trades, if we're kind of starting from 5th Ed or Pathfinder, but we want to put our own spin in it, so we're going to slap on this points buy system, which I just found incredibly confusing when I was reading it. I at one point I thought there might be a currency that you derive from something else. Maybe there is. You have to spend points to get languages and things, which is fine, but I've always thought the idea that your languages and stuff would come from, who raised you, where you grew up, where you've been, that sort of stuff, rather than, well, I've got an extra point, I guess I'll just learn fish speak. So, yeah, that's that. Okay, this is getting very rambly, I know. We'll go past that mastery. Oh yeah, so mastery. So there's mastery, which it comes after skills, trade, and languages. It is the skill mastery, there's trade mastery, and is there language mastery? Yeah, there is. I don't know why. This appears to be a subsystem that's just been applied very broadly until you get to combat mastery that works slightly differently, and you can convert trade points to language points, but not the other way around. I don't know why. I came to a rule in this book and thought, okay, you've explained it. Why is that the rule? It's not clear. It just seems very arbitrary. But And this is combat mastery. Checks and saves. This is a system that uses degrees of success. And it uses advantage and disadvantage, and it uses multiple advantage and disadvantage. And it's kind of a lot. And then you can spend, I think you can spend your action points that you get every round to affect certain things, and there's ways to use, there's a way to take checks in combat and out of combat. They're different. There's language checks. Yeah, okay, trade checks. Alright, let's get away from this. Saves derived from your attribute. Oh, okay, so there's another thing before we go much further. There's, going back to the idea that the attributes are basically your bonus is your attribute. They've evened things out quite a bit by also declaring that you have a prime bonus. And your prime bonus, which you can think of like proficiency in 5th Ed, D&D, your prime bonus is what you'll add to most attack rolls and some other stuff. It is equal to your largest attribute bonus, but it is not derived from, and apart from the fact that it's equal, it is not of the same type as. So you can, and the examples to give you, like you can build a barbarian that has a very high charisma, like it's their highest attribute. I think starting characters you're limited to +3, and I don't think it goes much higher than, I want to say +5 or +7, something like that. I could find it here very quickly. Prime attribute, not quickly enough as it turns out. Prime attribute, prime modifier I should say. How does it go? +3, +7. This is a, wait, are there 20 levels? That's a 10 level system. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Okay, so your prime modifier is used for most of your sort of take an action stuff, be that, make a test, especially in combat and for, I think, spellcasting as well. And it's always equal to the value of your highest attribute, so if it changes, your prime modifier changes. And it's not an attribute and is not considered to be the attribute that you derive the value from. That's fine. Now, it does mean you can get a little bit wacky with that. I kind of think that based on the way that skills work, because your skill list is grouped by might, agility, charisma, intelligence, prime, I'm like, okay, is there any reason not to always build a character with the highest possible intelligence? Because I can use it as my prime attribute anyways. Okay, you won't get as many hit points, but I will get I get like a good nearly a half of all the skills fall under intelligence, and thus would derive a bonus from having a high intelligence modifier. So in an attempt to make sure that anybody can play anything, and that no one's left behind in combat situations, because your prime attribute, presumably, as long as you're not doing something really daft, everyone's prime attribute is probably going to be, or prime modifier is probably going to be about the same. Then, yeah, there's, you can kind of start to manipulate the rules to generate interesting and odd characters that are like, oh, I've got a really intelligent barbarian. Why is he really intelligent? Because it means I get more skills, and I'm just better at attempting skills, even if it's something I'm not particularly good at. Right, skipping around again. I want to get to the combat section, which is where the wheels kind of start to come off for me. So we've briefly touched on checks, and they give formulas for each. The formulas are pretty easy to understand, but there's a fair few of them. So skill formula, attack formula, spell formula, which is going to be actually a lot of them are just the same. DC20 plus your prime modifier plus combat mastery for spell checks and attack checks. So in some ways this system simplifies what 5th Ed and D20 do. In other ways, I feel like it then needlessly starts doodling in the margins. And I'll come on to my prime example of that, and probably where I'll end this ramble. How much time have I put on the board? Oh, about 15 minutes. Okay, we're longer. Man, you can spend a lot of time rambling, which is kind of what reading this feels like. I will. So, okay, past checks. Man, I just got to zoom through this. Saves, briefly touched upon. You can read it yourself. Defenses. Oh, man. Okay, so the defenses. So this game has... you have two types of defenses. You have physical and mystical defense. And then, I don't know, do you get armor as well? Or you derive some defense from the armor you wear, if I recall correctly. And you've got this... So, how to... This... That's a big long pause. Maybe someone will cut that out. You've got defenses, and then you've got damage reduction. Damage reduction is ever so slightly weird in that it's regular damage reduction the way you understand it, against this or that type of thing, physical or mystical. So you don't just get damage reduction, it's typed. Okay, fair enough. But damage reduction can be overridden by degrees of success in attack, making an attack more powerful. Say, where is it? So you got damage reduction, but it can be bypassed by a degree of success, usually in multiples of 5. A heavy hit, a brutal hit, so +5, +10, a critical hit, natural 20. All bypasses damage reduction, fair enough. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of, hey, these two great systems you love, who are kind of derived from the same place but went in different directions. Let's just fork them back together and not leave out anything. Health points, another good example of that. So you've got your health points, you've got health thresholds, and here's a perfect example. Anyone remember and actually quite like 4th Ed D&D with the bloodied status, where you hit half your health points, and then it would, certain things might happen. Certain monsters might do something, certain character types or classes or races might do something. Well, they've got bloodied in this, you'd be delighted to know. They've also got well bloodied, which is, instead of being half HP, you go to a quarter your HP. And then you go to Death's Door, which is at 0. You've got this kind of, I'm crawling around, I can still do like one thing a turn. And then there's this Death Threshold, which is 0 HP minus your prime modifier. But you're also still considered to be bloodied and well bloodied. And I'm like, okay, it's like when you've discovered that Oreos, there's a double stacked Oreo. I was like, I could just eat 2 Oreos, but no, we've double stacked them. That's special and different. I like the bloodied mechanic. I don't know that I also need the well bloodied mechanic, like I'm ordering a steak. It just seems like you're adding this other kind of layer. And another example of that is in combat, which I just are making checks things, so I just skipped. The more often you make a check during your turn, it stacks another layer, a level of disadvantage. So in theory, you can check for something a few times, and then it's going to probably cost you one of your action points to do that. And then each time you attempt it, you get another level of disadvantage. So you've got, for every level of disadvantage, you roll an additional die, and it's the same for advantage. It's like, okay, I like advantage, disadvantage. I think it's kind of it's that 2d20 kind of swing. But now we're noodling. It's sort of like this system is echoing on itself. Let's do it again. Let's do it again and again. Let's do it again and again and again. So you end up going, and you have to calculate, say, well, I've got these sources of advantage, these sources of disadvantage. Normally you'd just go, okay, overall I have advantage or disadvantage, roll the dice. Now you're like, okay, 3 sources of disadvantage, 1 source of advantage, I'm at double disadvantage, I roll 3 dice, my original check, the disadvantage dice, and the second disadvantage dice. Like, this is exactly the sort of system where if you're not paying attention to everything that's been said up to this point and around, you're probably going to end up missing something. And I know Pathfinder's Second Ed kind of has this problem again on the player side, where there can be lots and lots of different stacking +2s for different things. But this just seems like that, but even more annoying. Because these sources of advantage and disadvantage could be coming from anywhere. Attacks are martial range, spell attacks, martial attacks, melee ranged. There's nothing really special. So determine if it hits you know, equal or better a target's defense. And cool. Where's defense derived from? I've forgotten. Let me just check. Did I even read that bit? Did I get that far? Defense is derived from something. I should probably search for it. Defenses. Oh yeah, you've got two, like I said, physical, and there's formulas. There's a physical defense formula 8, so it's like base 8 instead of like our base starting point is 8 for determining these things, plus combat mastery, plus agility, plus armor bonus if applicable. Fine, that is what it is. Okay, what can I say about that? Not much. Combat mastery, it's a whole thing. It's part of the masteries, but it's a more complicated mastery than trade or skill masteries, and it has its own rules. So it looks like it's called mastery, but it isn't mastery. Death store is temporary. There's a death check saving check mechanic, making death saves essentially, getting stabilized, whatever. Fine, that is what it is. Damage, crit, hits, hit, miss, degrees of success. We discussed that. Adding damage order. Okay, this is where I really start to glaze over when I see checklists for adding damage order. It's like, okay, talked about damage reduction, resistance, and then there's resistance and vulnerabilities as well. Yeah, this is just starting to stack and stack and stack. I don't see this as being. I've listened to some preview videos and things about this, going, hey, you can do anything, and it's kind of streamlined. It's really simple. It's like, I don't know. Reading all of this, and everything comes with an example and a tip and a sidebar. It's a very dense document that does not very good flow in this sample rules. But look, that's all up in the air. That's all to play for. Yeah. Okay. So combat. Oh yes. Here's when kind of the wheels fell off me when we get to combat resources. So you've got action points. Okay, action points, I think we all understand them. It allows you to cost the action economy, and I thought it's a really good feature of Pathfinder. I'm one of these weirdos that thinks, yeah, raise a shield costs an action point. It kind of adds a lot of flavor and allows you to really build into certain kinds of martial characters that specialize heavily in doing certain things. So there's that. You can also... So the action points, you can't spend them outside of combat, fine, they're action points. You can spend them on actions and reactions or features such as maneuvers, cantrips, so you're activating a lot of your stuff, it isn't free, you have to spend an action point, and you've got an action point maximum of 4, so it's quite like Pathfinder in that respect. And there's mana points as well. They work like a kind of traditional RPG mana point pool rather than spell like Vancian spell slots, things like that, and you regain all your mana points to finish a long rest. Now, then there's stamina points, which is another point to keep track of, and these are spent on techniques, class features, and sometimes in place of action points when performing martial maneuvers. So, okay, and then there's grit points as well. And if you've got a high charisma attribute, you might have a strong force will and the ability to influence and impact others around you, giving you grit points, and that's equal to 2 plus your charisma, and you bring in negatives as well. And you spend them you can spend a grit point to reduce the damage you take by 1. Now damage, the range on damage is fairly low in this game, if I recall correctly, so it's not like... That's fairly significant. Like, I think a heavy crossbow can do like 2 damage, so get to reduce that by half or 1. And then this save resolve. So when you're a creature that you can see or hear makes a save, you can spend a grit point and as a reaction to grant the creature advantage on save. So here we go. Now we're spending points to start stacking advantage on other people, in other people's turns. Some points you get back at the end of your turn. Actually, when do you get these points back? Where do they refresh? Stamina points. You regain stamina points during combat in a variety of ways depending on your class features, and get them all back when combat ends. And then grit points, I imagine, is going to be somewhat... Whoa, excuse me. Definitely cut that one out. I think I'm also coming down with something. And I'm about to go on holiday. It's classic. You take a vacation, you get sick. The whiskey, I think that's probably just... what am I? I'm at double disadvantage, but whiskey gives me advantage. But recording on... I've got my microphone strapped to a drawer at the moment because I just moved house. So that's advantage. I think I have double advantage on this podcast. Okay, listen, I think I've made some of my thoughts fairly clear. It's... There's an awful lot piled on to an awful lot, which is what happens when you take two game systems and put them together and don't really cut away much of any... Oh, okay, I mean, you've gotten rid of spells. Have they gotten rid of spell slots? Please tell me they have. Otherwise, what I just read makes me very nervous. Checking here, spell casting. Yeah, spells known, spell resources, spells known. Number of spells is shown on the spells known column of class tables. Okay. And then increase it, gain levels, class features, spell lists. There's 3 spell lists. I can't remember if they kept that in for the new 6th ed. The 3 spell list, Arcane, Divine, and Primal, or Druidic, or whatever you want to call it. And gaining a spell list. You can gain access spell list to your classes, spell casting feature, cool. Spell resources, minimum number of action points, fine. Again, I think that's something they've taken from Pathfinder to cast spells. So each spell is going to have an action point cost, which is good and right. Do they have a stupid rule about only being able to cast one spell a turn or something? Mana, but you've got, okay, so it's action points, and then you've got mana as well. I don't even know at this point. Yeah. Alright guys, that's it from me. Very befuddled. Somewhat snuffly. Runty. Ogre's head, giant's head, head of a giant. 2-headed, the other head. I wish them all the best. Look, it seems to have gotten some people's attention. I think this might get sold to people who aren't sure that they want to go into the forever edition of D&D that is 6th ed. And it might be a bit of a pup for them because it is quite complicated, I think. There's lots more to track. And there's different pools refreshing at different times of points. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. I'd be really curious to find out what Hida-O-Win thought. But anyways, I'm pretty sure I was billed to come on second. If I'm on first, then you'll actually get an actual explanation from Hida. Or you can just put this podcast on loop and really help our numbers. And if you really want to help our numbers, we'd love to see you over on our Discord, which you can find a link to in the show notes. We're also on YouTube, where I think we just got our 51st subscriber, so maybe you could be 52, which would bring us up to a deck of cards. And yeah, that's... we're getting... We're just waiting for our scrawled on a piece of paper YouTube plaque play button any day now. I think I've made that joke in a previous episode. Right, I'll leave you with it. I can't... without seeing this on the table, I know I would probably get a handle on it eventually. I think I would want to keep a couple of stacks of bennies. Different, like if you're the sort of person who likes to collect beads and tokens, this might be the system for you, because it'd be very useful for trading around the table and giving people... There's the help action gives a help dice, but only for a specifically declared person and action, and you have to declare it before they resolve their turn, so they might just take it and go, thanks but no thanks. It's like, it's a whole thing. Less flexible than the aid action, really, in many ways, but more potent because it's a D8, I suppose. That is probably more. No, an aid in the 5th ed gives you advantage on something, I think. So yeah, a D8 that they might not be able to use. It's kind of like one of those presents you get from someone, and it's like, oh, it's a mortar and pestle. Thanks. I don't cook, and I'm not an alchemist, and I'm not looking to make gunpowder. So cool. I did. Complete side note. I did give a friend a mortar and pestle once as a present, a big chunk and stone one, because they worked in pharmaceuticals, and they just looked at me like I'd handed them a dog leash if they didn't own a dog. It was probably one of the best gifts I've ever given. I wonder what they did with it. It's probably plant pot or something now, or it was big enough it could hold a lot of dice. So you're welcome. I hope you liked it. Okay. Or a lot of tokens in this case. Okay, folks, that's me over and out. And just in case that this is the end of the episode, this party's over. Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.